The observation deck of the Galactic Council station offered a view of 3 suns setting over the horizon of Axios Prime. HFY stood there, her blue-silver feathers catching the fading light as she watched the colors blend together. She had been stationed here for 6 months now, working as a cultural attaché for her people, the Etheri. It was peaceful work, the kind her species excelled at, sharing poetry, arranging art exchanges, teaching others about their philosophical traditions. She didn't notice the human approaching until he spoke. "Beautiful, isn't it?" His voice was soft, almost musical. The way 3 different stars can create such harmony. HFY turned to see a human male standing a respectful distance away. He wore simple diplomatic robes and his dark hair was neatly arranged. What struck her most were his eyes, warm and genuinely interested, not the calculating gaze she'd seen from so many other diplomats. "It reminds me of a poem from my homeworld," she replied carefully. Most species found Etheri poetry boring, too abstract for their tastes. The human smiled. "The 7th Wing's meditation on light? 3 flames dance yet cast one shadow, unity and separation. Separation and unity." He quoted it perfectly, even capturing the rhythmic cadence of the original language. HFY's feathers ruffled in surprise. "You know our classical texts?" "I'm Tae-Yang Kim," he said, bowing slightly in the Etheri fashion. "I represent humanity in the current negotiations. And yes, I've been studying your people's philosophy. It's remarkable. 800 years of unbroken peace, all guided by the principle of harmony through understanding. That was how it started." A conversation about poetry on an observation deck. Tae-Yang asked if he could learn more about Etheri culture, and HFY found herself agreeing to meet him again. Then again, and again. Over the following weeks, their meetings became the brightest part of her days. Tae-Yang brought her flowers from different worlds, each chosen with care. He learned to prepare traditional Etheri dishes, laughing gently when his first attempts were barely edible. They spent evenings in the station's garden, discussing philosophy and art while the artificial stars twinkled overhead. HFY learned that Tae-Yang had been a diplomat for 8 years. He spoke of his work with genuine passion, describing how he'd mediated disputes between species who'd been enemies for generations. Other diplomats respected him, she noticed. When he entered a room, conversations became calmer, more civil. He had a gift for making people feel heard. "How do you do it?" she asked him one evening. "How do you stay so patient when others are shouting?" Tae-Yang considered the question carefully, as he did with everything. "I suppose I've learned that anger rarely solves anything. There's always a better way if you're willing to look for it." 6 months after their first meeting, HFY realized she had fallen in love with him. It terrified her. The Etheri didn't bond across species often, and certainly not with humans. Humanity was still relatively new to the Galactic Council, only 150 years since first contact. Her family would have concerns, but Tae-Yang was so gentle, so genuinely kind. He remembered small details about her preferences. He asked about her work with real interest. When she was tired, he brought her tea. When she was sad about being far from home, he played recordings of Etheri music and sat with her in comfortable silence. 1 year into their relationship, during a meteor shower visible from the observation deck where they'd first met, Tae-Yang asked her to marry him. He'd learned the traditional Etheri proposal ritual, complete with the ceremonial phrases in her native language. HFY's feathers shimmered with emotion as she accepted. The wedding was beautiful. Her family traveled from their homeworld, initially skeptical but quickly charmed by Tae-Yang's respectful integration of their customs. He wore traditional Etheri colors blended with human formal wear. The ceremony mixed both cultures seamlessly. Etheri songs of bonding followed by human vows of commitment, their life together settled into a comfortable rhythm. HFY continued her cultural work while supporting Tae-Yang's diplomatic missions, their quarters filled with art from dozens of worlds, proof of their shared appreciation for beauty. Every evening they would cook together, sharing stories from their days. Tae-Yang was attentive, thoughtful, devoted. He seemed almost too perfect. HFY sometimes wondered if all humans were like this, so carefully controlled and gentle. She'd met other human diplomats and they all shared that same quality, a deliberate grace in how they moved and spoke, as if every action was considered before being taken. 3 months after their wedding, she noticed something odd. While helping Tae-Yang change for a formal dinner, She saw a scar on his shoulder, a jagged, rough line that looked old but severe. It seemed strange for someone who'd spent his life in diplomatic circles. "What happened there?" she asked, tracing the scar gently with her feathers. Tae-yang hesitated. Just for a moment, but she caught it. "An accident," he said finally. "From when I was younger. I was hiking in a restricted area and fell." The explanation made sense, but that pause lingered in her mind. Why would such a simple question require hesitation? The real hint came 2 weeks later at a reception for minor ambassadors. A Chitrak representative, emboldened by too much fermented nectar, made a crude comment about ethereal females. Haewon felt her feathers flatten in anger, ready to respond when Tae-yang's hand touched her arm. It wasn't restraining, just a gentle touch. But something changed in the air around them. The temperature seemed to drop. Tae-yang smiled at the Chitrak ambassador, that same warm smile he always wore. But his eyes were different, harder. "Perhaps," Tae-yang said softly, "you'd like to reconsider that statement." The Chitrak ambassador went silent mid-sentence. Its compound eyes flickered nervously. It stammered an apology and quickly excused itself, practically fleeing across the reception hall. Other diplomats nearby suddenly found reasons to move away. The circle of space around Tae-yang and Haewon expanded as if by unspoken agreement. "What just happened?" Haewon asked quietly. Tae-yang's smile returned to its usual warmth. "I simply reminded him that disrespect has consequences." The way he said it, so gentle, so soft, somehow made it sound more threatening than any shout could have been. That night, lying in their quarters, Haewon studied her husband's sleeping face. He looked peaceful, almost innocent. But she couldn't stop thinking about that moment at the reception. About the scar. About how all the other diplomats had moved away as if recognizing something she'd missed. Who was Tae-yang Kim, really? And what else didn't she know about the gentle human she'd married? The questions troubled her sleep. But when morning came and Tae-yang brought her tea with a soft smile, asking about her plans for the day, those doubts seemed silly. This was her husband, kind, patient, devoted. Whatever shadows she'd imagined were just that. Imagination. She pushed the questions away and kissed him good morning, choosing to believe in the gentle diplomat she loved. For now. The emergency council session was called at dawn. Haewon woke to find Tae-yang already dressed, reading something on his tablet with unusual intensity. His expression was calm, but his eyes moved quickly across the screen, absorbing information with focused precision. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up. "The Soros Empire is making territorial demands," he said quietly. "They're threatening the border colonies. Your people's settlement on Melodia is in the disputed zone." Haewon's feathers went rigid. Her younger sister Da-un lived on Melodia, teaching music to children. They wouldn't actually attack, would they? Tae-yang didn't answer immediately. He just looked at her with those warm eyes that suddenly seemed to be calculating something she couldn't see. "I hope not. But we need to be prepared for any possibility." The council chamber was chaos when they arrived. Representatives from a dozen species were shouting over each other. The Soros had sent General Crix, a massive reptilian warrior whose scales bore the scars of countless battles. He sat at the negotiating table like a predator among prey, barely concealing his contempt for the proceedings. Tae-yang took his seat as lead mediator with his usual grace. He opened the session calmly, inviting each party to present their position. But General Crix interrupted almost immediately. "This is waste of time," Crix growled, his translator rendering his words in harsh tones. "Small species hide behind councils and words because they have no strength. The Etheri are songbirds playing at civilization. Their colonies exist because we allow it." Several delegates objected, but Crix spoke over them. "And humans," he turned his predatory gaze to Tae-yang, "you are worst of all. A pet species that arranges flowers and speaks softly. You think words make you powerful? Pathetic." Haewon watched her husband carefully. Tae-yang's expression didn't change. He still smiled that gentle smile. But something shifted in his posture, a subtle change that made him seem more present, more focused. Like a machine switching on. "Please, General," Tae-yang said in his soft voice. "Continue with your assessment. I find it quite interesting." Over the next hour, Crix outlined the Soros position. They were the strongest military power in this sector. They had conquered 17 worlds, Strength was the only currency that mattered. Species without military might had no right to territory, resources, or sovereignty. When Crix finished, Taeyang nodded thoughtfully. You place great value on military strength, he said. Perhaps we should discuss military history then. To better understand each other's perspectives. What followed made Haewon's blood run cold. Taeyang began describing the Saros Empire's conquests with detailed precision. He knew battle strategies, casualty figures, tactical decisions. He spoke about military campaigns the way most people discuss the weather, casually, comfortably, as if warfare was a subject he knew intimately. Then he pivoted to humanity's own history. He talked about Earth's wars with that same gentle tone. World War I, World War II, conflicts Haewon had never heard of. He described weapons that could destroy entire cities in single blasts. He mentioned casualty numbers that made several delegates gasp. We humans have a particular expertise in warfare, Taeyang said softly. We spent 10,000 years perfecting it. We developed strategies for every terrain, every situation. We created weapons that could sterilize continents. We fought ourselves so efficiently that we nearly destroyed our own world. Twice. The room had gone completely silent. Even General Crix seemed unsettled. So when you speak of military strength, General, Taeyang continued, his smile never wavering, I understand exactly what you mean. The question is, do you understand what I mean when I speak of peace? The session ended inconclusively, with the Saros refusing any compromise. That evening, Haewon couldn't stop thinking about what she'd witnessed. That wasn't the Taeyang she knew, or was it? The gentle voice had been the same, but the words, the knowledge, the subtle threat beneath everything he'd said, where had that come from? When Taeyang went to shower, Haewon noticed his personal tablet on their bedside table. It was unlocked, something that never happened. Taeyang was always careful about security. She shouldn't look. She knew she shouldn't, but her feathers were trembling, and her mind was full of questions she was afraid to ask aloud. The tablet showed a file marked, Personnel Record, Classified. Her hand moved before her mind could stop it. The file identified Taeyang not as a career diplomat, but as a former member of something called the Terran Diplomatic Corps, Special Operations Division. His previous assignment was listed as Conflict Resolution Specialist, Outworld Territories. There were mission records with names like Operation Gentle Reminder and Operation Olive Branch. Most details were redacted, but she caught fragments: hostile extraction, threat neutralization, tactical resolution. Terms that had nothing to do with peaceful diplomacy. A photo showed Taeyang in black armor, holding a weapon she didn't recognize. He looked younger, harder, but those were the same eyes, the same face. Her husband. You shouldn't have seen that. Haewon spun around. Taeyang stood in the bathroom doorway, water still dripping from his hair. He wasn't angry, just resigned, sad even. He moved to sit on the bed, keeping distance between them. What is this? Haewon's voice came out smaller than she intended. Who are you? Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight she'd never heard before. Before I became a diplomat, I served in what humans call peacekeeping operations. I was sent to worlds where human colonies or interests were threatened. My job was to resolve conflicts. Resolve them how? Preferably without violence, he said carefully. But with violence if necessary. I was good at it, Haewon, very good. That's why they eventually moved me to diplomatic work. Because I understood both sides of conflict resolution. Haewon's feathers were flat against her body, a sign of deep distress. You've killed people. Yes. No hesitation, no euphemism. Just the truth. How many? Does the number matter? Taeyang looked at his hands. I did what was necessary to protect innocents. Sometimes that meant taking lives to save others. I'm not proud of it, but I'm not ashamed either. It was my duty. And now? Are you still? No, Taeyang said firmly. I've been a full-time diplomat for 8 years. That life is behind me. Everything I've shared with you about my love for peace, for art, for you, all of it is genuine. The person you married is who I really am now. Haewon wanted to believe him. But she kept seeing that photo, the military records, the way he'd spoken to General Crix with such intimate knowledge of warfare. When you look at me, she asked quietly, do you see a threat you've assessed and dismissed? Do you calculate how to hurt me? The question seemed to break something in Tai Yang. His carefully controlled expression crumbled. "When I look at you," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I see the reason I wanted to leave that life behind. I see beauty, kindness, everything I fought to protect but never thought I deserved to have for myself." He stood, moving toward her slowly, giving her time to step away if she wanted. She didn't. "I won't lie to you, Heywan. Part of me does assess automatically. It's trained into us, but what I assess is how to protect you, how to keep you safe, how to build a life where you never have to see that other side of me." "But it's still there," she whispered. "That other side." "Yes," Taeyang admitted. "It's still there. It always will be. I just hoped you'd never have to know about it." They stood in silence, the distance between them feeling vast, despite being only a few steps. Heywan's mind spun with everything she'd learned. The gentle diplomat she'd married was also a trained warrior. The man who quoted poetry with her had killed people. Both were true. Both were real. "I need time," she finally said, "to think about this, to understand what it means." Taeyang nodded, pain clear in his eyes. "Take all the time you need. I'll sleep in the guest quarters tonight." As he gathered his things, Heywan watched him move. That graceful, deliberate way he had. She'd always thought it was just diplomatic training. Now she recognized it as something else. The movement of someone always aware, always ready, always calculating. Her gentle human diplomat. Her dangerous human warrior. The same person somehow. 2 days passed in painful silence. Taeyang stayed in the guest quarters while Heywan tried to process everything she'd learned. She went through her daily tasks mechanically, her mind constantly returning to the same questions. Could she love someone capable of such violence? Was the gentleman she knew real or just a mask covering something darker? She was in her office when the emergency alert came through. Every screen on the station flashed red. The Saros Empire had rejected all peace terms and was mobilizing its fleet. Target the border colonies, including Melodia. Heywan's hands trembled as she accessed the colony's communications. Her sister Da-un appeared on the screen, trying to stay calm but clearly frightened. "They're saying the Saros could be here in 3 days, Da-un said. "We have no military, Heywan. Our shields might hold for a few hours at most. They're evacuating children first. But there are 17,000 of us here. We can't get everyone out in time." Heywan felt her world crumbling. The Council will do something. They have to. But the Galactic Council did what it always did, argued. She sat in the emergency session, listening to representatives debate sanctions and strongly worded condemnations. They discussed forming a peacekeeping force which would take weeks to organize. The Luminite proposed economic penalties. The Etheri ambassador begged for immediate action. General Crix's hologram appeared, his expression smug. "The Council is welcome to talk while my fleet moves. That is the difference between strength and weakness, 3 days. Her sister had 3 days to live, and the Council was talking about sanctions. That night, Heywan found herself outside Taeyang's guest quarters. She knocked softly. He answered immediately, looking tired. He'd probably been monitoring the situation too. "Heywan, I need you," she interrupted. "Not the diplomat. The other one, the warrior. Whatever you were, whatever you can do, I need that person now, please." Something changed in Taeyang's eyes. Not cold exactly, but focused, determined. "Come in." Inside, his tablet was already displaying tactical information about the Saros fleet. He'd been planning something. "If I do this," he said quietly, "there's no going back. The Council will know what humans really are. Everyone will know what I really am." "I don't care," Heywan said, and she meant it. "My sister's going to die. 17,000 innocent people are going to die. If you can stop it." Taeyang nodded once. He opened a secure communication channel on his tablet and entered a series of codes. When someone answered, he spoke in a clipped military tone Heywan had never heard from him. "This is Agent Taeyang Kim, TDCSOD, requesting reactivation authorization. Priority, imminent civilian massacre. Requesting immediate deployment of diplomatic response team." The response was equally professional. "Authorization confirmed. DRT-7 is en route to your location. Data 6 hours. Welcome back, Hammer." The channel closed. Heywan stared at him. "Hammer?" "My call sign," Taeyang said. He was already moving, pulling equipment from hidden compartments in his quarters. "From before. You should know what you're asking for, Heywan. The DRT isn't gentle. We'll stop the Saros, but the way we do it, it won't be diplomatic. I don't care about Diplomatic anymore. I care about my sister. 6 hours later, a human ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. It was sleek and dark, radiating barely contained power, nothing like the friendly diplomatic vessels humans usually sent. 12 humans boarded, and Heywan saw immediately that they were nothing like the diplomats she knew. They moved like Tai Yang, with that same deliberate grace, but they wore it openly. These weren't people pretending to be gentle. They were weapons that had learned to talk. The team leader, a woman named Jiwoo, greeted Taeyang with a familiarity that spoke of shared history. Good to have you back, Hammer. What's the situation? In the station's secure conference room, Taeyang transformed before Haiwan's eyes. He laid out tactical displays, discussed threat neutralization and surgical strikes with cold precision. This was the other side of him, fully visible now. A warrior in his element. The Soros fleet has 37 ships, he explained, pointing to the tactical display. They'll reach Melodia in 48 hours. We'll intercept them here, in the Axios belt where the asteroids will limit their maneuvering. One chance to withdraw. If they refuse, we disable the fleet's command structure. Disable? Heywan asked. You mean destroy? Jiwoo answered, her tone matter-of-fact. We mean disable. We'll cut their engines, weapons, and communications. They'll be dead in space, alive but helpless. The Council's peacekeepers can collect them at leisure. If they're smart, they'll surrender. If not, she shrugged, we'll teach them why humanity earned its council seat. The plan was precise, efficient, and terrifying. Heywan realized she was seeing human warfare, the thing they'd supposedly left behind. Except they hadn't left it behind at all. They'd just hidden it under diplomatic robes. Before the team departed, Taeyang found Heywan in their shared quarters. He was wearing armor now, black and angular, covered in equipment she didn't understand. He looked like a stranger. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry you have to see this. I'm sorry I'm not the person you thought I was. Heywan was crying, her feathers drooping. Just bring my sister home, please. I will, Taeyang promised. Then softer, and I'll come back to you, if you'll still have me. The next 36 hours were the longest of Heywan's life. News spread across the station. Humans had sent a warship. Some called it a bluff. Others were terrified. General Crix issued a statement calling it the desperate posturing of a weak species. Then the reports started coming in. The Soros fleet had stopped. Not slowed, stopped. They were just floating in space, completely dark. And one human ship was broadcasting a message on all frequencies. This is the Terran Diplomatic Corps to all vessels. The path to Melodia is closed. Any ship that proceeds will be disabled. This is your only warning. Someone leaked tactical footage from the engagement. Haiwan couldn't help but watch it on her tablet. She saw Taeyang's team moving through space in their armor, boarding Soros ships with terrifying precision. They moved like nothing she'd ever seen. Fast, coordinated, unstoppable. On General Crix's flagship, Taeyang himself confronted the general. The massive Soros warrior charged at him, fully armed and armored. What happened next lasted less than 4 seconds. Taeyang disarmed and disabled Crix with brutal efficiency, then leaned close to say something the audio didn't capture. Later, Heywan learned what he'd said. Strength isn't about who you can conquer. It's about who you can protect. Remember that. 37 Soros warships disabled without a single death. The message was clear. Humans could have killed everyone aboard those ships easily. They chose not to. That restraint was somehow more frightening than violence would have been. When Taeyang returned to the station, he was immediately pulled into council hearings. But before that, he came to find Haiwan. He was out of the armor now, wearing simple civilian clothes, but she could still see the warrior beneath. Dayun is safe, he said first. Melodia is safe. I kept my promise. Heywan threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder. Relief and confusion and love and fear all mixed together. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Taeyang held her gently, the same way he always had. I'm still me, Heywan. The person who loves you, who wants to spend his life with you, that's real. This... He gestured vaguely toward the docking bay where the military ship waited. This is just another part of the same person. I know, she said, and for the first time since discovering his secret, she thought she might actually understand. I know. The Galactic Council erupted in controversy. Some species were grateful. Others were terrified. Everyone wanted to know what else were humans hiding. If they could disable an entire battle fleet, what else could they do? HFY watched the hearings from the gallery. She watched her husband, her gentle, deadly husband, answer questions with patient diplomacy. She watched other species realize what humanity had been all along. Not pacifists, not weak, just choosers of peace who happened to be very, very good at war. And somehow that made their commitment to peace more meaningful, not less. The Galactic Council Station had never been so tense. 3 days after the Soros incident, every species was demanding answers. The peaceful species wanted reassurance. The aggressive ones wanted to know if humans posed a threat. And everyone wanted to understand what they'd really invited into the galactic community 150 years ago. HFY sat in the diplomatic gallery, watching her husband testify before the full council. Taeyang wore his diplomatic robes again, looking exactly as he had when she'd first met him. Gentle, calm, approachable. But everyone in the room now knew what lay beneath that exterior. Ambassador Kim, the Lumini representative's crystalline voice rang out. Humanity presented itself as a peaceful species seeking to join the galactic community. Yet we now learn that every human diplomat is also a trained warrior. Is this not deception? Taeyang responded with his characteristic patience. It's not deception, honored representative. It's context. We never claimed to be incapable of violence. We simply chose to lead with peace. There's a difference between being harmless and being peaceful. We're the latter, not the former. The questions continued for hours. How many humans were trained like Taeyang? What weapons did Earth possess? Why hide this capability? Taeyang answered each question carefully, revealing little but hiding nothing. During a recess, HFY went to the station's archive. She couldn't stop thinking about what she'd seen, what it meant. She began accessing Earth's historical records, the ones most species never bothered to read. What she found made her sick. Earth's wars were documented in horrifying detail. Something called the Second World War had killed over 70 million people. The casualties were so high she had to check the numbers 3 times to believe them. And that was just one conflict. Earth's history was filled with wars, each one teaching humans new and more efficient ways to kill. She read about trench warfare, where soldiers lived in mud and died by the thousands for mere meters of ground. She learned about atomic weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. She discovered that humans had planned for something called mutually assured destruction, a strategy based on having enough weapons to kill everyone on Earth several times over. The Etheri had achieved space travel without ever developing weapons beyond simple tools for hunting animals. Humanity had reached the stars while carrying enough firepower to sterilize planets. But what disturbed HFY most was a note in the records about humanity's entry into the Galactic Council. They had voluntarily submitted to weapons restrictions. They'd agreed to limit their military, to focus on diplomacy, to be good neighbors. But they'd maintained something called specialized peacekeeping divisions for protecting human interests and allied species. The diplomatic response teams were just one division. How many others existed? What else could humans do if they chose to? That evening, there was a special session. Ambassador Rin, the senior human representative, had requested time to address the council directly. Rin was an older woman with tired eyes who'd served in the diplomatic corps for 30 years. HFY had met her several times and found her kind, almost grandmotherly. Now, watching Rin stand before the council, HFY wondered if that was another mask. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Rin began, her voice carrying across the chamber. I understand your concerns. You've discovered that humanity is not what you thought. So let me tell you exactly what we are. The chamber fell silent. We came to the stars carrying the weight of 10,000 years of warfare. We fought each other over resources, ideology, religion, territory, and sometimes just because we forgot why we started. We've built weapons that could sterilize planets and developed tactics that could break empires. We've done terrible things to each other, things that still haunt us. Rin paused, looking across the assembled species. When we met you, all of you peaceful species who'd never known total war, we had a choice. We could be what we'd always been, or we could be something better. We chose to be diplomats, teachers, and traders. We chose to be gentle, but, she continued, and her voice grew firmer, we never chose to be harmless. There's a difference, and it's important you understand it. We committed to peace, but we kept the capacity for war. Because we learned something in our bloody history. Peace without the ability to defend it is just waiting to be conquered. A Chitrak delegate stood. How many of your diplomats are warriors like Ambassador Kim? Rin smiled sadly. All of them. Every human who speaks softly to you has been trained in combat. Every one of us who works for peace knows exactly what war costs. We believe you can't truly value peace unless you understand the alternative. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Rin waited for silence before continuing. We're not hiding this anymore. You deserve to know who we are. We're the species that nearly destroyed itself and chose to do better. We're the ones who understand violence so well that we dedicated ourselves to preventing it. We're diplomat warriors, peacekeeper soldiers, whatever you want to call us. We chose gentleness from a position of strength, which is the only gentleness that lasts. Another delegate asked, Are we to fear you then? No, Rin said firmly. But neither should you think us weak. We offer you gentle hands and kind words, and we mean them. But if you threaten the innocent, if you attack those we've sworn to protect, you'll discover that gentle hands can become iron fists. That's not a threat. It's a promise. Later that night, Haiwan found Taeyang on their apartment balcony, staring at the stars. She'd been processing everything she'd learned, everything she'd seen. She joined him silently, and they stood together for a long moment. I've been thinking, Haiwan said finally, about what makes someone gentle. I always thought it meant being incapable of violence. But that's not right, is it? Taeyang turned to her. No. True gentleness is choosing peace when you could choose otherwise. Anyone can be gentle when they have no other option. The real test is choosing it when you have the power to hurt. When you hold me, Haiwan asked quietly, do you calculate how easily you could hurt me? The question clearly pained him. Yes, he admitted. I calculate it automatically. It's part of how we're trained. But, he took her hands gently, I also calculate every way I could protect you. Every threat you might face, every danger I could prevent. Both calculations happen simultaneously. The choice of which one to act on, that's what makes us human. Haiwan thought about this. About how every human diplomat was also a warrior. About how they'd chosen peace while keeping the capacity for war. About how her gentle husband contained both sides and somehow made them work together. Do you see everyone that way? She asked. Every human does. We can't turn it off. We assess, we analyze, we prepare. But we choose what we do with those assessments. Every single day, I choose you. I choose gentleness. I choose peace. That choice matters more than the capability ever could. Haiwan leaned against him, feeling his steady heartbeat. She'd married a gentle diplomat and discovered he was also a warrior. But now she understood. He wasn't one pretending to be the other. He was both fully and completely. The gentleness was real because the strength was real. The peace was genuine because he understood war. I'm starting to understand, she said softly. What? Why humans make such good peacekeepers? You're not afraid of violence, so you don't flinch from stopping it. You know exactly how bad it can get, so you work harder to prevent it. And when you choose peace, everyone knows it's a choice, not a weakness. Taeyang held her closer. That's all we've ever wanted. For people to understand that our commitment to peace is real precisely because we know the alternative. In the days that followed, the Galactic Council adjusted to its new understanding of humanity. Some species drew closer, grateful for powerful allies committed to protecting the innocent. Others kept their distance, wary of humanity's hidden depths. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humans were no longer the gentle newcomers everyone had assumed. They were something far more complex and far more valuable. 3 weeks after the Soros incident, life on the station had settled into a new normal. The Galactic Council had formally recognized humanity's unique approach to peacekeeping. Diplomat warriors who genuinely sought peace but could enforce it when necessary. Some species called them hypocrites, others called them heroes. Most just called them complicated. Haiwan was preparing tea when the door chime rang. She opened it to find her sister Daoyun standing there, looking nervous. I wanted to thank him, Daoyun said quietly. Taeyang. He saved everyone on Melodia, and I never properly thanked him. Haiwan let her in. Taeyang was in his study, reviewing diplomatic briefings. When he emerged and saw Daoyun, his expression immediately softened into that familiar gentle smile. Daoyun, it's wonderful to see you, he said, bowing in the traditional Etheri greeting. How is Melodia recovering? Dayun had been tense, but something in Tai Yang's genuine warmth made her relax. Better. The children are still scared sometimes, but we're healing. I wanted to thank you for what you did. I'm just glad everyone is safe, Tai Yang replied simply. How are your music students? Are they still practicing the harmonic scales you taught them? They talked for over an hour. About music, about the colony, about Daewon's work with the children. Tai Yang asked thoughtful questions and listened with real interest. By the time Daewon left, she was smiling, her feathers showing the bright colors of comfort and happiness. At the door, she hugged Haewon. I understand now, she whispered. He's not a monster pretending to be kind. He's a kind person who can be a monster when he has to be. There's a difference. After Daewon left, Haewon found herself thinking about her sister's words. She'd been struggling with the same question since discovering Taeyang's past. Which version was real? The gentle diplomat or the deadly warrior? But Daewon had found the answer Haewon had been searching for. Both were real. Both were him. The next day, Haewon attended a human cultural event on the station, a memorial ceremony for Earth's wars. She expected military pride, glorification of strength. Instead, she found something very different. The ceremony was held in a simple hall decorated with images from Earth's history. Not victories, but consequences. Pictures of destroyed cities, grieving families, empty battlefields. A human historian spoke, her voice heavy with old pain. We gather today to remember what we were and what we cost ourselves. These wars taught us how to kill efficiently, yes, but more importantly, they taught us why we should never want to. Every human alive carries the knowledge that we once nearly destroyed ourselves. That's why we're so committed to peace now. We know exactly how terrible the alternative is. The ceremony included readings from human writers who'd lived through wars. Their words spoke of horror, loss, regret. Nothing about glory or honor, just the bitter acknowledgement of waste and suffering. Afterward, Haewon approached the historian. I thought humans would be proud of their military achievements. The woman looked sad. Proud? No. We remember because we must, but we don't celebrate. Our capacity for violence is a tool we developed out of necessity. It's not who we want to be. It's just who we can be when we have to. That evening, Haewon and Tai Yang walked through the station's garden. The artificial stars were particularly bright, and the air smelled of flowers from a dozen worlds. They sat on their favorite bench, the one where they'd spent so many evenings discussing philosophy and poetry. I've been unfair to you, Haewon said finally. Tai Yang turned to her, surprised. What do you mean? I've been treating the warrior version of you as the real you and the diplomat as a mask. But that's wrong. They're both real, aren't they? You're not pretending to be gentle. You're not hiding violence under diplomacy. You're both things at the same time. Tai Yang was quiet for a moment, considering. Yes, I didn't stop being a warrior when I became a diplomat. I just expanded, added layers. The person who disabled General Crix's fleet and the person who reads poetry with you, they're the same person. I contain both. Doesn't that exhaust you? Haewon asked. Holding both sides together? Sometimes, Tai Yang admitted. But it's also freeing. I don't have to suppress one part of myself to be the other. I can be gentle because I'm strong. I can choose peace because I understand war. Does that make sense? Haewon thought about the memorial ceremony, about Daewon's words, about everything she'd learned. Yes, she said softly. I think I'm beginning to understand. She could walk away. Their marriage had provisions for this. Cultural incompatibility was grounds for annulment. No one would blame her for being unable to accept what her husband was. It would be easy to leave, but she thought about how Tai Yang made her tea each morning exactly the way she liked it. How he listened to her ideas about ethereal poetry with genuine interest. How he'd built a life with her that respected both their cultures. How he'd asked her permission before reactivating as a warrior, putting her choice above his duty. She thought about how, when her sister was in danger, he hadn't hesitated. He'd done what needed to be done, then come back to her and asked if she'd still have him. She made her choice. In ethereal culture, Haewon said, there's a second marriage ceremony. For couples who've faced a major trial together, it's a recommitment, an acknowledgement that we've seen each other's full selves and choose to stay together anyway. Tai Yang looked at her with hope and uncertainty. Are you saying, I want to do that ceremony? Haewon said firmly. With you. Because I've seen all of you now, the diplomat and the warrior, the gentle and the deadly. And I choose you, all of you. The ceremony was held a week later. Ambassador Rin attended, along with Da-Un and several of their friends, both human and alien. It was simple but meaningful. Each partner spoke 3 truths about the other. Hei-Wan went first, her voice clear and certain. You are gentle. You are deadly. You chose to be both for me. Taeyang's response was equally firm. You are kind. You are brave. You chose to see all of me and stay. They renewed their vows, and this time there were no hidden depths, no secrets. Everything was acknowledged. Everything was visible. Everything was accepted. Their relationship did change, but not in the way Hei-Wan had feared. They were more honest now. Taeyang didn't hide his warrior side. Sometimes he shared his tactical assessments, explaining how he thought through security or protection. It was strange at first hearing him discuss potential threats while they ate breakfast, but Hei-Wan learned to appreciate his perspective, and she didn't pretend to be comfortable with violence. She made it clear that she hoped he'd never have to be a warrior again. Taeyang accepted this, promising he'd always choose peace first. They found their balance. Taeyang remained a diplomat, still gentle, still committed to peace. But Hei-Wan knew that if danger came, a warrior stood beside her who would do whatever was necessary. The story of their relationship spread throughout the Galactic Council. The Etheri who married a human, diplomat, and discovered what he really was, then chose to stay anyway. It became a symbol of humanity's integration into galactic society. Humans weren't hiding what they were. They were just choosing to lead with their better nature. The capacity for violence remained, a promise and a warning to those who would threaten the innocent. 5 years later, Hei-Wan stood before an audience of young diplomats from a dozen species. She'd become an ambassador herself, specializing in cultural understanding between peaceful species and humanity's unique approach to diplomacy. People ask me what it's like being married to a human, she told her students. They want to know if I'm afraid, if I worry about what he's capable of. The answer is complicated. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Humans have a saying, walk softly and carry a big stick. I've learned that the really important part isn't the stick. It's that they genuinely mean it when they say they'd rather not use it. That reluctance combined with absolute capability is what makes them such effective peacekeepers. A young Etheri student raised a wing. But isn't that deception? Pretending to be gentle when they're really dangerous? No, Hei-Wan said firmly. It's not pretending. My husband is genuinely gentle. He loves peace, values art, spends his evenings reading poetry. That's completely real. He's also a trained warrior who can disable a battleship. That's also real. Both things exist in the same person because humans don't see them as contradictory. She smiled, thinking of Taeyang waiting for her in their quarters. Humans chose gentleness from a position of strength. That's not deception. That's the only kind of peace that lasts. And that's what makes them remarkable. After the lecture, Hei-Wan received a message from Taeyang. He was on another station, handling another crisis, probably being gentle and diplomatic while carrying enough knowledge to end a war. The message was simple. Missing you. Found a new kind of tea from a trading post that I think you'll love. Home in 3 days. Stay safe. I love you, she smiled, her feathers shifting to warm silver. Her gentle human diplomat, worried about finding her the perfect tea while probably calculating threat assessments and tactical responses. That's what he really was. A warrior who chose love, a fighter who chose peace, a human who decided that after 10,000 years of war, maybe it was time to be something better, and she loved every complicated, contradictory, gentle, deadly part of him.